On the Leash, unleashing the truth, breaking down those barriers, and sharing these incredible stories behind the harnesses. I am your host, Service Dog Educator.
I'm Bumblebee.
And whether you're an ally or you're a handler or you're just curious, you're in the right place. Let's get ready to learn, laugh, and be inspired because life is better with a working dog by your side. Today we have a very special guest. He has not only been on this platform on my regular scheduled lives, he is a mentor of mine, inspiration, dog trainer of the gods. We got Mr. Tuvets, aka Austin, up here. He's an amazing individual, and we love and support him very much. You guys may have seen him in my lives, and also he has been on this podcast before. We love having him, and thank you so much, Tuvets, for joining us today, and we really appreciate having you on here.
Thank you for having me. It's always a joy to come in and impart knowledge, and the conversation is always shall I say educational.
We strive for that. And those of you who are aware of the online course that we are doing and everything, because I've said it a couple times on the lives, Austin, aka Tuvets, has been a part of it, has been helping me get through this and everything, been a business partner of mine in some sort of way with the online course. So don't worry, it's not just me with this online course that you are getting. It is also Babam, Austin, and also Bumble, and also now Coda, also known as Amber. Her inspirations have been in there as well for knowledge that I'm not 100% aware of. So you're getting a whole bunch of people with different knowledges and different expertise into the mix as well when it comes to this online course. So be prepared for that to launch here soon. But let's get into the topics today, guys. So the first, actually, before we get into the topics, wait a minute, I forgot something. We've got some breaking news. Dun dun dun. So, as you all know, this is part of the segment where I break the news of what's going on in the service dog community, whether that's drama or anything that's happened this week or last week. And comes to find out, there is an individual who was lost in the service dog community due to lying. Well, not really lost, but he kind of like went off the face of the earth. Because he was caught lying about being a veteran disabled individual and falsifying his service dog. We are talking about aka Sable Warriors, aka Daddy Zuko, and he is back on TikTok, guys. I just found his TikTok. He is back on TikTok, and I am so freaking amazed that he's back on TikTok after all the slamming that he got done, all the, I believe, going to be lawsuits against him and everything. The nerve of him to have it. Of course, his account is now private, so we can't show you guys everything. But there was a video that I stumbled across. And I'm not going to say his full name because, frankly, I cannot pronounce it. And I do not want to, become it's not cultural appropriation. It's how do I say it? I don't want to mispronounce the name because I don't know how to pronounce it, basically, is all I'm going to leave it at that. So, yeah, Daddy Zuko, a.k.a. Sable Warriors, is back on TikTok, guys. And he is sitting there doing push-ups shirtless. He's doing video game content, it looks like. I don't think he's doing any service dog content at all. I think he's just mainly sticking with...
Which, speaking of, where is Azula?
Where is Azula? Yes.
Where is Azula? The big question that everybody's been dying to know. So where is Azula? Has she been retired? Where is she? She's not in any of his videos anymore. Where'd she go?
Here we go. Sorry. But that's... dun dun dun. We're going to put in captions, where is Azula? But hopefully that dog is no longer in a working position anymore, such as service work, because... as much as I didn't know the dog and I don't know them personally, the stories that I've heard about Azula and everything, I hope that they are not working them anymore. And I hope that, while I don't want him on TikTok, I hope that they have learned their lesson. Probably not, but you can always hope for the best out of individuals. And I hope they learn their lesson and they try to stay away from the service dog community as far away as possible.
I just hope he didn't pull a Maddie and Leo.
Oh, Probably.
I hope that he
Well,
did not do that.
well, I'm not going to pander to drama, but what I will say is I have my thoughts, and I'll be honest with you. We shared a lot of personal moments together on on the phone. Um, Whenever I found out, it hurt it hurt beyond all measure. To find out what had happened and what he did to not only the service dog community, but he also
The
he
veterans
impacted.
community.
Well, I mean, he impacted a lot of other community, and um, I'm probably going to take a lot of heat on this, but I'm going to take my stance, brother. I forgive you. You know, will we ever forget about it? No. I wish you the best, and I hope you know not to do what you did, called out like that, ever again. But other than that, you know, I don't want you to go hungry, but you ain't eating at my table anymore.
Well said. Well
I can
said.
agree. Yeah, I can agree to that. But that was our breaking news of this week, guys. Again, we're not going to share his social media because we don't want people to go and give him attention that he does not need and everything. But be on the lookout, keep an eye out, guys, and just if you guys are not aware of the story, we'll do that for a podcast another day. But let's get into the topics now, shall we? What counts as a task under the ADA and what doesn't? This is our first topic of the day, and we're going to be talking about what tasks are under the ADA and what aren't under the ADA, and how you can better help when you're task training your service dog, or if you have these tasks that are not under the ADA, you can retrain these dogs. I'm going to start out with one of these tasks that is not under the ADA, which is the go find me task or go get somebody task. I think that though this task is not under the ADA whatsoever because of the danger that it puts the dog in, and frankly, it's deemed not in control as well because they're away from you as well. And I personally feel like if individuals have these tasks, they should have it as for one specific person, or they go find somebody with that person, such as like a guiding task. That is the only time I think that those tasks are okay. But just the dog by itself going to find a random person, that's not okay, in my opinion. Do you guys have anything to say on this matter?
Guest first.
I will let you know I will let Bumble answer this, and then I'll
All
come
right.
in.
So, as somebody who has trained service dogs in the past and just regular pet dogs too, the go find me task is a very dangerous task because it essentially means that your dog is not under your verbal or physical control, which is what negates the whole, your dog has to be under control at all times, whether that be verbal or physical. And on top of that, these dogs are, expensive. They're not cheap to replace. I think the cheapest dog I've ever seen was like 5 grand. And I've heard people say that their dogs are up to 95 depending on what task, what breed, if you go with a super important program or not. And so it's a huge like danger to not only yourself but also the dog itself. Austin, your thoughts?
Well, where a lot of confusion is going to come in play is, you know, you'll get the argument of, well, it's a retrieval. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right if, and there's a big if, somebody that the dog knows to go to, in that situation. Normally, when you go out into a store or public access, the dog's not going to know the employee and the staff of that establishment. And when you go down and you say,
Go find them.
go find them or go find me, they it's not going to be the same person. So that's where the gray line is going to be. And unfortunately, no, it's not. Now, on the flip side to that token, where you know let's say you and your significant other you go into a store. Normally, y'all, you go one way, they go the opposite way, and you know, you can send your dog to, I was like, go find mama, you know, or go find dad, go find daddy. You know, they're going to a direct person. That would be retrieval, because you're bringing back that one person individually, to step into the situation, and they know, go find mama, go find daddy,
See, I
and
feel like that would be fine for like a small kind of mom and pop shop, but for
right.
places like Walmart, again, I don't feel very
No,
comfortable
no,
with
no.
doing that in there. And again, a lot of places have leash laws, and
Hmm.
again, because technically the go get help task is not a recognized task because it does
Right,
leave the dog not under control, whether that be verbal or physical.
right.
Like
Well,
so it's a huge up in the air.
hang on a second, because I'm in agreements with two bits here a little bit about if it's for a one specific person, whether it's in a big shop or small. Like I wouldn't recommend the task force in a mall. That's the only stipulation where I'm like, okay, no, because if they're out of like a shop, and everything. Like they're on the first floor, and then the dog is with the handler on the second floor, and they're looking around the entire store for that individual. Then no, but like a Walmart or a Target or a mom and pop shop or a library or a hospital or whatever the case is, I think that that's fine as long as it's in the same area and they're not going to like different parts.
See,
Kind of like
Right.
a mall.
now, I've trained Abby to do the go get help task, but I only use that like if I'm working, like because I only work in like small shops, right? Like where there's like usually a counter and it leads to the office or to a back room, so
Hmm.
it's not like the entire store is open to her to go, and roam around. And I have had to use it once or twice where I have fallen down and something happened, and I've been like, go get XYZ person, or go get the manager, go to the office. And she is gone and she's, sat at the office and barked. Personally, what I've started doing is teaching Abby to do bark alerts. Cause again, it doesn't matter who's in the vicinity. If I hear a dog barking, rhythmically, it's like, oh, what's going on? Let's figure that out. So
Well, that's actually what I was going to recommend. I mean, if you take a look at it, and I mean, from looking at it, if it's because technically it is, retreat. If there's no specific person directly, like going and getting an employee, you're never going to get the same. Whereas, go find mom or dad, it's always going to be the same person. It's always going to be, go find mom. They may not be in the same spot. And there might be, different environmental cues that have to be, adhered to, or, I mean, different pressures, of that situation. But you're going directly to that one person. It's that specific task, you know, from that, that it would be, you know, yes, that is a task. It's just they're just learning to search, learning to find, like, I need to find mom or dad, and they go get that individual, they bring him back. That's where I would consider it retrieval from that. Now, if you don't have access to that, what I would recommend is exactly uh, what Bumble, was talking about, where the dog, sits and and barks. It says, "Hey, somebody needs help. Somebody needs help. Somebody needs help," and then
sits and
everybody,
listens.
right,
See,
That's
personally,
essentially what Leo did for me though when he was working. Because I never had a direct person with me. Like, yeah, my husband would be with me some of the times, but not all the time. So it couldn't be a known task of his because my husband's not with me a majority more than he is with me due to his working. So I had him do bark alerts instead of go finding individuals because it wouldn't be the same person.
yeah, and see, like, my dog and, I go shopping with my parents. It's very rare that I ever go shopping on my own. I don't like shopping on my own. But like, my parents know what my dogs sound like. My mom, my sister, my siblings know what my dogs sound like. My brother knows what my dog sounds like. So if she starts barking, I've told them, like, hey, if you start hearing Abby barking and you know what she sounds like, if you hear her start barking, there's something that's going on. You're going to want to come running. and figure out where it's coming from. Because again, I feel like a bark alert is a lot safer because again, think about it. Dog running around a grocery store. What's your immediate thought, Austin?
Well, it would also depend on the situation, you
But no, no,
know.
no. Just say that like you don't know the situation and you're just seeing a dog running around a store.
Well, so because I am a handler, it would depend on if I had my service dog with me or not.
I know,
If
but
I had,
your instant thought is,
then
"Oh, there's a dog running around."
get the fuck out of there.
Exactly. So again, I'm saying this like from like a perspective of I've actually seen service dog handlers where they'll say, "Oh, go get help," and they'll send their dog away, and the dog will be gone for like 5-6 minutes,
Hmm.
searching for somebody. That's 5-6 minutes that dog could potentially be taken out of the store. It could
Hmm.
get into an accident. It could get taken by somebody. It could just walk straight out the doors. You know, e- I'm not saying that it's like a bad thing, but I'm just saying like there's so many variables that it could potentially be a danger to the dog itself.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So a
You
bark
know.
alert, in my opinion, is a much safer alternative to the go get help task because again, you're gonna know your dog, and whoever you're going shopping with, I would say like if you're going to take somebody shopping with you, you should show them how your dog sounds and be like, hey, listen, if you hear this dog barking like this, and then show your dog how they bark. If you hear this dog barking, come running. That is a much safer, more controlled alternative.
Right.
And that actually counts under like what tasks the ADA does cover, which is bark alerts. There's plenty of
Right.
other different tasking as well that ADA does cover, such as jump alerts. They do deep pressure therapy, psychiatric tasking, such as behavioral disruptions, blocking, crowd control. There's a eloping task
Booping.
for autistic individuals, mobility issues, booping, such as like counterbalance. You can help. They can help out with like stairs, doing those kind of counterbalances with that. There's forward momentum, helping you pull your wheelchair, or you needing the forward momentum, guiding, of course. Those are all tasks that are covered under the ADA. There's not a lot that's not covered. It's just as long as the dog itself is under control, and a lot of people are like, well, technically the task is under control, but technically, actually, it's not. Because you don't have a leash on your dog. While, yes, you don't necessarily have to have a leash if the task or the disability interferes with it. But, like we explained, the Go Find Me task can be very dangerous for the dog, very dangerous for you. And also, while we're on the subject of what isn't covered, I have a question for you guys. You guys are the trainers. You guys would know this more than me. The tethering task for autistic individuals. Now there's a
Mhm.
lot of beef going on about this with certain trainers and certain handlers. And since you, Bumble, were a trainer, and Austin, you are a trainer, I want to get your guys' opinion. Now, from a parent's perspective of an autistic child who has a service dog, I don't like the tethering task. I think it can be very dangerous for the dog, and it can be very harmful to the dog. I don't ever want to teach my son's service dogs to ever do that to him. I'd rather do alternative tasking that does the same thing without the dog being tethered. How do you guys feel about the tethering, and should that be under the list of counting or not?
Personally, it can be severely damaging to a dog's joints. Especially since like I have personally seen it in, grocery stores where a person will tether a child to their dog and, the child has autism and the child will just like start darting off and the dog is like essentially pulled off its feet. That can be incredibly damaging to a dog's morale. It can be incredibly damaging to their joints, their overall health. Um, I'm of the firm belief that that's not a very safe task for either. Because what happens one day if the dog's just had enough of it, and the dog, the child starts pulling on the dog, and the dog just goes, you know what, I'm done. Bite the child. Your thoughts, Austin?
I would definitely agree. I mean, you do have to take consideration for the safety of the dog, and I mean, of course, that's why we all into consideration the OFAs, which I know us three, but I can't remember what OFA stands for.
I can't either. It's
I
been a
got
hot
it.
minute.
Hang on. I got it. Hang on. It's right here. Because I just did it on the slide.
It's been a minute for me.
Okay, so it stands for Orthopedic Foundation for Animals.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, that makes sense.
So, Orthopedic Foundation for Animals. I mean, you want a standard OFA, evaluation to make sure that the dog is, sound, to do any type of mobility work. But, I mean, other factors, to consider, you know, based on, the height, the weight, the age, of the kid. And you also have to take into consideration, age, the height, the weight, of the dog, to where the dog's ratio or the dog's, height and weight ratio, outweighs the human height and weight,
Which is
ratio.
very rare.
As time goes on, absolutely. But, I mean, think about it this way. You have a 2-year-old Cane Corso, that you've had, or a Corso that you have had for 2 years, grown up with the kid, has, is that unicorn and loves the kid to death. You know, you have a you have your kid that's, roughly what, 25 pounds. I mean, that the height and the weight and the ratio, for the Corso versus the kid is going to be a whole lot better versus, the kid, being a whole lot taller and, it has a little bit of girth on him. It's gonna, outweigh him, from that standpoint. Which, I mean, depending on the size, of the kid, and then also depending on the size of the dog, you know, I if and this is just me playing, playing devil's advocate here. My recommendation, if, somebody is wanting to do the tether, method, make sure that the dog's, height, weight, and, ratio, and, as far as that goes, is a lot bigger than the tiny human.
See,
Because
I'm of the, I've seen it a lot, and me myself growing up with a lot of children with autism and mental disabilities, those kids tend to grow really fast and really like tall. So and again, they're not going to stay little forever.
right,
So like and again, dogs are not meant for pulling to a
but
degree.
here's the thing, Bumble. I said, I never said I agreed or disagreed. What I said was, if you're going to go that route,
Yeah.
this is what I would recommend. What
Personally, I would recommend a mini horse.
me personally, I've actually worked, I've worked tracking, and I've worked, the dog being able to escort the kid back,
Yeah, that's
to.
much safer is escorting them back.
Mhm,
But we're talking about like them physically attaching a harness to the kid
mhm.
with a harness to the dog with a leash between the two.
Well, I mean, I've actually, two vets actually has worked with, a, you know, with a kid, that has had autism, who's light risk, and I mean, whenever I say that, get your running boots on, I mean, we pounded sand, we beat feet, burned rubber, just to catch up with the
Yeah.
little shit, you know.
Personally, what I would do is I would offer, instead of, you can have a secondary tether to the dog, but
Mhm.
having a primary tether to the parent, like on like a waist belt.
You could, yeah.
That is a
There's a
much
lot of, to me, there's a lot of alternatives to that tasking and everything. But I am gonna, like, not to cut you guys off or anything, but we do gotta move on to the second task. I don't think that there's much other, unless you want to do one of you guys want to do a quick, like,
um
fire down any task that is not under the ADA or that that they don't recommend.
no, I'm going to get a little controversial here. This is going to be a little weird. I don't think prolonged and use putting okay, this is going to sound weird. You putting your dog into a downstay and then walking like away from your dog more than 10 feet. That is, in my opinion, your dog technically could just get up and walk away. It's the same thing as the go get help task.
I don't think that that's a tasking though.
It's a safety thing.
Right.
But it's still not a tasking. What I'm asking is if one of you two want to
I
sit
know,
there
but
and say
I've
and go
seen a
down the
lot of
line of
handlers.
tasking.
I've seen a lot of handlers do that, like, they'll go like down, stay, and then they'll walk like 20, 30 feet away from their dog. And it's like, well, what happens if your dog decides to get up and run away? You're 20, 30 feet away. Are you going to go running after your dog? What happens if somebody takes your dog while you're 20, 30 feet away? You going to go running after it? It's like there's so much, like potentiality for a disaster, in my opinion.
True.
Should you teach your dog a downstay? Yes. Should you teach your dog a solid downstay? Absolutely. But again, you still got to do it within boundaries.
Oh,
Now,
absolutely.
I can agree to that. But let's move on to the second topic. Topic number 2 is invisible disabilities and public judgment. In this topic, we're going to talk about individuals who have invisible disabilities and the public judging those individuals for, to them, not looking disabled or not looking as if they have a disability, and why and how this could be, number one, extremely hurtful and ableist of you to do so, while also helping handlers figuring out a way how to deal with this in a respectful slash professional manner to a certain extent, while keep it up, because while I agree that people can be assholes to a certain extent, I do want to sit there and say that while we are out in the community, whether with a service dog or not, we represent the service dog community either way, guys. So we have to have a certain professional standard to a certain extent. So let's get into this topic. I know Tuvas is raising his hand. He's itching to get this topic. So Tuvas, I'm gonna have you start us out.
No, so the reason that I raised my hand, I mean, there's no secret that I served in the military. I mean, I could actually think of, two invisible, you know, symptoms that nobody knows, and quite frankly, I don't talk about it unless I absolutely need to talk about it. One, my psychiatrics, for what I went through, not only what I went through within my career of the military, but also the trauma that I faced while I was over, on a business trip. The couple of times that I was deployed, and even the third, you know, there were things that stick with me on a daily basis. You know,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily see those, but I will also bring light to another situation. Just because I have all four appendages doesn't mean that
They're all functional.
exactly. Um, yes, I'm in good favor with my doctor, and they know what I do, and they know that I have a service dog with me, quite a bit, and they know that I get out, and I exercise minimum. I hope you didn't catch that. Uh, but long story short, I do have a handicap placard, and I have been asked, well, why do you need a handicap placard? And I was like, well, there, I have been through, I've been through experiences where I have been put on a trampoline, and bounced around a time or two. But also at the same time, I mean, in, long story short, I got a fucked up back,
Same here.
and I'm almost 40 years old, and I mean, yes, I'm a tiny little spry thing, but I hurt, and I hurt all over. But you wouldn't know it because I have a high pain tolerance, and if I'm saying it hurts, it's at a what normal people feel it as at 100. I'm feeling it at five, if not 1,000.
Yeah, normal, they're like,
There's
oh, it's 1 to 2, and us, it's like 10.
mm-hmm,
10 is our normal.
mm-hmm,
And Austin, you said it, really well. I now use a stand-up rollator. And the amount of times I've been told at work, because I finally got the green light to be able to use it at work, because I need to be able
Hang
to sit
on,
down or
pause
stand
really
up.
quick. Do you guys hear cutting out from
No,
each other? Because Kaiten says y'all are cutting in and out.
it might be just their internet.
Yeah, it might be them.
Yeah, because I'm not
Yeah,
having
just
any
let
cutting
me
out on
know.
our end.
Anybody else in the comments who's listening, do you hear cutting out at all? Please let us know.
I think it's just on their end. It's not going to affect the podcast on our end, though.
I just wanted to make sure because it's loud and clear to me. I have unstable internet, but I'm also on my data right now on my phone because the other internet was not working really well. That's why we were late coming on. So I just wanted to
Mm.
make sure.
Yeah, no, we're having fine on our end.
Okay,
And
so
again,
going
if
back
people
in,
want to hear the podcast, I mean, again, we're going to be uploading the, regular audio from it. So,
yeah, just check it out on YouTube and Spotify. We're sorry to cut you off, but 3, 2, 1, back at it again.
okay. So, normally I use a stand-up rollator at work, and, thank God I finally am able to use it because it's, changing, the way that like I'm not in pain all day long. Well, the other day I got told, I was talking to one of my regular customers, and he looks behind me and he's like, "Why do you need that thing?" And it's like, um, I mean, I don't want to have to show you the MRIs or the X-rays because my spine looks like I got termites living in it. And he's like, "Well, you're only, 27 years old. You're not even 30. You shouldn't need that thing." And it's like, yeah, tell that to my slowly decaying body.
Mm.
It hasn't quite gotten the message yet. And Austin, honestly, you could fool me for 25. You know, and I've been confronted in parking lots, as well. It's like I've got a handicap placard, and I live in Texas, where these, older people will come up and they'll zoom up behind you in their nice big trucks, and they'll be like, "You don't need to park there. That's meant for old people like me." And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, but then again, I'm spicy, so this is what I do: is I just go, "Well, you know what? You don't look stupid, but here we are. I mean, I need this spot for a reason. I don't just have this for shits and giggles. Now if I
Right.
had it for giggles and shits, then I'd have more problems. But you know, it's just it is what it is, and especially me being young, I feel like I get that a lot more than some of the older crowd, like Austin. I'm sure like you get it once in a blue moon. I get it like every day,
I
where they're
believe it.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, have you tried, ashwagandha? Have you tried, essential oils? Have you tried praying it away?" And it's like, girl, I don't know what kind of demon lives in my spine, but whatever it is, I want it out of here faster than you do.
Yeah.
But there, it's like diet and exercise will be the cure for you. And it's like, girl, I am doing diet and exercise.
I've had similar instances as well with like people judging me off of the way that because I can walk perfectly fine. I don't have issue is like mobility issues like you guys do, but I am a mother of two and I utilize a medical and psychiatric service dog. And the funny thing is that because I don't have mobility issues and I do have a handicap placard, but it's for my son, so I don't utilize that unless he's with me. But anytime like prior to even getting that, when I would take my service dog out with, two young kids, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a mom. Like you're not disabled. You can't be disabled if you're a mom." I was like, "Who the hell told you that?" Like there's plenty of people that have disabilities that are parents or that have kids and all of that. And it's a lot of ableism, I will say, and of course this podcast is not going to change people being ableist or anything else like that. It's to more bring awareness and have people that are listening to this understand that they're not alone in this. But it's also to help you guys figure out how to
Better prepare yourself.
better prepare yourself and deal with those types of situations. My biggest advice that I'd like to give to anybody is that these are strangers that you don't know who they are majority of the time. Whether it's a customer, whether it's somebody who you're walking into the store and they're a customer as well, even family members sometimes, you have to protect your mental health, you have to protect your sanity, you have to protect everything to keep you going and keeping, everything insane. So if you have to cut people off, you can definitely do that, and I would recommend doing that. And if it comes down to like customers or, people in the public, ignoring them and just saying, "You know what, you don't know me, you don't know what I have to face on a regular basis, and if you can't be nice to me, then bye bitch."
See, one of my things that I mentally tell myself every day that I get up is, and this is a really good mantra to have. It's definitely helped me out a ton. Is if they aren't paying my medical bills, if they aren't paying my housing bills, if they don't know what my X-rays look like, and I don't know them, they're not my problem. Like that is literally what I repeat to myself every day that I wake up.
Three
It's just
F's.
it exactly. If you ain't feeding me, funding me, or having wonderful times in the horizontal bedtime,
Fornication.
fornication, exactly. If you ain't doing one of those three things, then you ain't my problem. You know,
Well, I mean, I would I would agree, but there's a big but here, and um, the thing that you have to remember, you're the only one that can control.
you
You're the only one that can. You are the only one that you can control the actions of.
agreed.
So
Hence why I'm
being
extra spicy.
you want to get spicy when you don't need to get spicy, or de-escalate the spiciness. Be like, yeah, they're so
I
stupid that
just
it
I just
violates the
mirror.
Geneva Convention.
Listen, Austin. I mirror. If you come at me sideways, I'm gonna come at you sideways. If you come at me asking questions, I will answer nicely. It all depends on, treat others as you would want to be treated. So again, if you treat me
Oh,
nicely,
absolutely.
I'll be nice and cordial. But as soon as you start treating me like a trash can, girl, be prepared to be treated like a dumpster. Like
This
I've
girl's
gone at it.
clean.
Like I've literally gone at it with, and old people in the parking lots of, Kroger. Like, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, I wanted that spot. You don't look like you need that. And it's like, like I stop for a second, but then again I remember, oh wait, they've just given me the green light to be rude back. And I go, well, you know what? You don't look stupid, but here we are. And you know what? Maybe if you had a little bit more empathy, you'd be a little bit taller and you wouldn't have as many wrinkles in your face because hate ages. And they'll like stand back and like clutch pearls, and it's like, yeah, that's right. I bite. Listen, I got all my teeth. You don't, Grandpa. Skedaddle.
True, but who's to say that they're not going through something just like you are?
And that's true. That is also very true. Again,
They
again, there are some days where I'm like, listen, I don't know what you got going on, but like you need to figure yourself out first before you come at me sideways because I got teeth and I bite. I don't want to have to bite, but I will bite.
but that's also why you have to protect your people.
Exactly. But then
I mean,
again, I work at 8-hour stand up routine, so listen, if nobody else is laughing, at least I make myself laugh.
true, but I
Yeah.
mean, you've heard the saying, you get more flies with honey, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I live in an area that's just full of very spiteful people, and I've had it happen, where customers have been, straight up just like rude for no reason. Like I've had like the honey, kind of like attitude where it's like, how are you doing today? The fake customer service Barbie voice. And it's like, I hope you found everything all right. And they'll just be like, just give me my stuff. I don't care. It's like, okay, all right.
And
And
that's what you have to deal with sometimes in public. I know that's, working in customer service as well. We've all had to deal with that kind of BS, disabled or not. But I do want to, because we are almost out of time for this podcast, so I do want to sit there and
get to the
get
handler mistakes we don't talk about.
exactly, because I know too, Vince is very excited about this one because he told me off camera that he has some things that he wants to say on this one. So we're going to move on to the third and the final topic of this evening, guys, which is handlers' mistakes that we don't talk about. So this, in this topic, we're going to go a deep dive into handlers and what they do as a mistake wise or anything else like that, and how you can improve as a handler. And let's get into the topic. So I don't really, I think the one thing that handlers, actually, I have one. I think one handlers that make mistakes on is showing their dog too much on social media. That's where that's where the mistake lies in, because you're going to get people to judge you when you don't know these individuals, and you're going to think you're not good enough or you're not disabled enough to have this dog. So my recommendation to all individuals, you can show your dog all you want, go for it. But there is a
Be
saying
prepared for
too much.
feedback.
There's a too much thing, and if you can't handle the feedback, don't do it. But I'm gonna let you guys take over this aspect, and
You first, Austin, since you're very enthusiastic about this.
I'll yield to you, then I'll bring it in
All right.
and bring it home.
All right. Mistakes that I see a lot of handlers do is they tend to panic whenever something happens. Like, let's say, for instance, I'm going to use myself because this has happened to me before, and this is something that I see a lot of. When your dog makes an accident in a store, I see it a lot where handlers will sometimes just like start freaking out over their dog having an accident in a store. I'm not gonna say that I've never done that before. I do it every time my dog had an accident in a store. Oh, it was just, oh my god, I'm so sorry, my dog. You know, I would literally shut down and cry and feel really bad and whatnot. I feel like a lot of handlers need to realize that their dogs are not robots, and that, just what you got to do is you just got to figure out, clean it up. You know, if you got to take the dog out to the car, leave it in the car. If you really need to go grocery shopping, um let's see. That's a big one, is like they tend to panic whenever something bad happens, and it's like that just adds on more stress to yourself than you need.
Yeah, I would highly agree with that. And I'm actually going to use uh, I'm going to use a story about a dog that you know that means a lot to two vets. It was a dog named Mattis, and I mean I got this dog whenever he was 8 weeks old, and I trained him up to a little bit you know just a little shy of a year than I two vets or than two vets was actually able to place him with his veteran, and he lived out the remainder of his life, in the veteran's home. And one of the times that I actually had public access, training with him, is we go into a local grocery store, and like I knew I should have taken him. I should have taken him to the bathroom uh, before I went in. We did exactly what we, or went in, got everything that I needed to get done, and we were actually walking right up to the cash registers, and sure enough, no pun intended, sure as shit, the dog, just goes blank, and just lays, one of those just nicely,
The cartoonish
yeah,
little piles.
yes, and it was one of those like dirty little shit, and that was pun intended.
And let me guess,
Um,
it was like the extra stinky.
oh yeah, and I mean, I was upset at myself. I was upset at the dog. It was one of those like, man, this dog knows not to do that. Like, oh my word. And I mean, I got down on myself, and I talked with I was talking with management and was like, man, like we need housekeeping to come over. I'm like, I'll pick up the defecation, from that standpoint, and then
And
you
wipe it
know,
up and clean it up and everything.
well, they're like, no, well, we got it taken care of. And he looks at me and goes, dude, shit happens. I mean, they're dogs. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Which, uh, that was actually the interaction with my now wife that we reconnected. Before this last reconnection, before we got together and got married, and years later, she actually was meeting the veteran and the dog. And I look over at her and I go, "Hey, remember that time I was in your store?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Remember the dog that you know, I was
Took the
like,
dump.
that took a shit in the store?" She was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You're petting him?" I was like, "No way." I'm like, "Yeah, that's him." And she goes, "Oh my lord, oh my Lanta." I'm like, "Yeah." I was like, "Now it makes sense." But I mean, as far as confidence, whether it be, I mean, even just behaviors of the dog, I think they humans anticipate how the dog is going to react versus not having that expectation of they try to anticipate and actually
Overcompensate.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they do is they overcompensate. When the only expectation is zero expectation, so they can expect the dog to fail, but when the dog actually succeeds and they give that mark word or give that reward is actually a genuine like yes, good boy, good girl, yes, and it's like oh, like I did something good versus good boy, good girl, it's like okay, I'm expecting you
It's a
to
low
do that,
value.
you know, and then you literally take away from that low value, and you're taken away from that relationship standpoint.
Yeah. And
Um,
something that actually happened to me, very similar to your story, Austin, is the last time that I took Abby out to public access. We were in a Costco, and I felt so terrible about this. I had taken Abby out, and I was starting to kind of question whether she wanted to continue doing service work at this point. And this was kind of like the final nail in the coffin of going like, you know what, she no longer finds it, comfortable being out in public, so I'm just going to keep her at home. But we were at
mhm,
Costco. We were just walking past the food aisle, and I get a tap on my shoulder, and I hear this lady go, "Ma'am, I think your dog is pooping on the floor." I'm like, and I look back, and there's Abby, just slightly behind me, just popping a squat,
yep,
and it's like, oh no, oh
yep,
no. And internally I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, freaking out and being like, oh god, no, I knew I shouldn't have brought her, I knew I shouldn't have let her come out with me, this is
right,
just that was the final nail in the coffin of going, she no longer likes this job, and I was freaking out the whole time. But I'll say this, the employees definitely handled it better than I did, because I kind of froze for a
yep,
moment,
yep,
and they were like, "Hey, don't worry about it. We had an old man in here literally like leave a snail trail of diarrhea down the aisles," and I'm like,
mm,
that's not great either. But like, it's not your job to be dealing with either
right.
either excrements, and I'm so sorry. And she's just like, no, it happens all the time. And I'm like, I don't want you to think that like this is like not a real service dog. And she goes, no, we can tell that it's a service dog. She just had an upset tummy. And it's like, yeah, she did, and I'm so sorry. And I've never been back since, because I just feel bad.
Well, I mean, something else that I've noticed, well, actually, two things that I've actually caught on, and this might be from a training standpoint. One, gear's either too tight or too loose. It
Yes.
never, it never is the right, it never is you know, the right fit, and once you get that right fit to where, you know you can establish that communication, with your dog. I mean, it changes, in a snap of a finger, and you can get the dog's attention. You get the dog to behave, but so whether that be from slip collars, prong collars, remote trainers, harnesses, gear you actually work with, it never fits the right way, from that standpoint. So that actually is something, to consider. Get the right gear that fits the dog properly. Don't get something that's going to fit, or you think that, is tight. The dog will tell you too fucking tight, you know, or like you can actually know that it's too tight,
Or
you
too
know.
loose.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I hit on the too tight because they want it looser than what it should be, and
I always go 3 fingers, and it's tight enough.
I always go two.
I
Hmm.
do 3 because the harnesses that I use go underneath armpits.
Okay.
So 3 prevents chafing.
Apples to oranges.
It's apples to oranges. It's however you want to do it. I do 3 because again, my dog is well trained, and I know she's not going to slip out of her harness if she decides to,
Right.
narrow her shoulders and try to slip out. But I do 3 fingers, at least around the ribs,
Right.
and over the shoulders. But
The
like it's kind of like up to you where you want to do around the tummy.
right.
But again, your
The
dog has to be comfortable working in it.
Oh, absolutely. And then this is definitely I mean, no, we're not talking training, but one of the things that I see, especially from a training perspective, Bumble, you might have seen it when you were working with clients, you know, when they're teaching operating classical conditioning, they
Mhm.
stay on the treats too long,
Yes.
to where the dog is like, oh, you know,
Dependent.
they're dependent on the treat, and
Yeah.
it you're fucking yourself up.
Yeah, like I do a rotation method where
Hmm.
like I'll start a dog off on treats, and then I'll start doing, treats and and doing pets and good girls and good boys or whatever. And then eventually I'll slowly start fading out treats and start going
Hmm.
more towards praise. Of course, don't cut off treats cold turkey. If your dog does a
No.
good job, of course, do give them a treat every now and then. But like if you're just using treats to get your dog to do something, then you're not really training your dog. Your dog is just waiting for its next command. It's Pavlov's dog. It's just waiting for the treat pouch. If that makes sense.
It does. That's actually where the fading, comes in. And, whenever I tell the veterans or, my clients, that are paying time, and I tell them straightforward, especially if they're a veteran. You have heard this, what I'm about to say, time and time again. I want you to look me in the eyes whenever I tell you this. And, they'll look at me and, they'll look me dead in the eye and I'll go, timing. Timing is everything.
Yes,
It can, it
seconds
can,
matter.
it can be your best friend or it can be your worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and then and then I'll have them, I was like, now that I have said that, I want you to repeat it back to me. And then, they'll repeat it. And I'm like, okay, you got it. The ones that truly understand it, it automatically clicks. And you see that, I mean, it's not going to be immediate,
Oh yeah.
but you see the change over time. But the ones that are just like timing, timing is everything. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy, and they're going through the motions that it doesn't actually click. Yeah, shit doesn't change.
Oh yeah. I feel another thing that a lot of handlers do is they overload their dogs.
Yeah.
And Austin, you're gonna know what I mean by that. They'll be like, "Oh, well, I want my dog to be like the number one, best thing on this planet," and it's like that's a great goal to have, but you gotta remember your dog is still a dog. Your puppy is still baby. Like, you wouldn't expect a 2-month old to pick up a violin and learn how to play the violin by the age of 1. Like, you can offer it and,
Right.
give them praise for it, but, I have the rule of 6 by 4, which is
Hmm.
first 6 months is you let the dog be a puppy. You do, the basics of like sit, come here, learning their name, playing, certain games, teaching them not to bite your hands, and stuff like that. You do just like the bare basics. Next 6 months is more like heavy set, training where it's like, recall from distances. It's downstays. It's going to be, the heavier kind of, training stuff. And then for third 6 months is going to be like task training and really making sure that they have a solid recall, and then some public stuff. And then the final 6 months is usually I do public access because I feel that that's a more balanced way of doing it because then you're not burning out the dog. And if at any point the dog, decides, oh, well, I don't like this, then you know what? You haven't lost much, if that makes sense.
Okay, so what did you call that?
6 by 4.
Why
It's
not
two
just
years
why not just call it the 4 6s, kind of like in Yellowstone?
because I'm not a Yellowstone fan. And besides, it's better than a 2 by 4 upside the head.
Well, call it the 4 6 method.
Well, 6 by 4 is it or I don't remember how to say it. It's not 6 squared, but it's just quadrants.
Right.
It's
Well,
just
that
quadrants.
I mean, I personally like Yellowstone. As soon as you were like 6 6 6 and 6, I was like, that's 4 6s. I was
Yeah,
like, I mean,
yeah, that's 2 years.
why not call it? Why not just call it the
Because
4-6 method?
I mean, you can call it whatever you want to, but that's how I do it. I break up my 2 years into 6 months intervals
Hmm. Gotcha.
because it's 6 quadrants times 4, which is
Right.
24, and 24 is 2 years.
But what's 5 times? What's 5 times 2? And 5 plus 5.
Yeah. And again, it's whatever you want to call it. It's just as long as like you're getting like the 6 months intervals.
Right.
But I see it a lot of times where handlers will rush their dogs. And it's like, they'll be like, yeah, my dog's trained and ready to go. But then, like, a year later, like, their dog is, like, reactive and they're no longer wanting to work and they're just tired. And it's like, what went wrong? And it's like, it's because you rushed your dog. You
Right.
didn't take the time to, let your dog be a dog. You didn't, sit there and actually work with your dog. You just tried to rush it.
Well, I think where, and this is actually one of the things that I've seen. They'll have like 3 or 4, 3 or 4 times on a concept, and you actually see this, and when you're teaching the stay command, of like they'll do one set of three, at a certain distance, and then they'll triple the distance, and it's like your dog, like my dog's not even, listening to it. It's like slow down.
Yeah,
And
take your time. Take your time.
I mean, Paul, I'm a WWE fan. You know, I like to watch wrestling. From that concept. And Paul Levesque is actually the chief, content officer, for wrestling, World Wrestling Entertainment, and he's actually predominantly known by the name of Triple H, which is Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And one of the things that as him in his leadership role, and when he is uh, giving advice to younger talent, coming up through the ranks, is when you think you're going too fast, slow down. When you think you're going too slow down. When you think that you're not moving at all, continue to slow down.
Yep. Rome
Soak,
wasn't built in a day.
well, what he's talking about is soaking it in,
Yeah.
and
Absorbing it, making sure that it's sticking. Again, like I
well,
said, Rome wasn't built in
from
a day, and neither should your dog.
well,
Right.
you know, from a wrestling standpoint, being that character, and listening to the fans, that's what he is meaning. How does that apply in dog training? So, one, if you slow down, and one, you're learning to listen to your dog, but two, you're also setting in that, you're building that confidence, you're building that, that relationship, with your dog whenever you slow down, to where y'all can literally start moving, at a pace. And then once that the dog is comfortable with it, then you start, doubling that pace, and then before you know it, you're doubling the double, and doubling, you're tripling the triple, and you're doing 4 times 4, and then before you know it, you're 100 miles, out from where you started, but you're still going
Right.
at the same, at a slower pace, and building that relationship, and you trust the dog trusts you, and you have that healthy environment of a relationship, with the dog, versus, what the fuck, I taught you better than that. Why are you acting this way? And you're not pissed off at the dog.
And I think that that's a good place to stop as well because we all have our mistakes that we make. We all learn from our mistakes, and that's what the main thing to take out of this is. Regardless of how old you are, if you're a new handler, if you're an older handler, you're gonna make mistakes. All handlers make mistakes, and it's our jobs to learn from them and do better the next time around. But with that being said, that is it for today's episode of the Beyond the Leash podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us, learning more about the amazing world of service dogs. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to follow, share, and leave a quick comment. It really helps us to reach more dog lovers like you. And until next time, stay positive, keep those tails wagging, and give your pup an extra treat from us. I want to thank you, Two Vets, aka Austin, for joining us on the podcast for today, guys. And make sure we go and follow them. It's right here. Austin, you can say your tags if you would like.
So if you want to follow me on TikTok, I am actually under Austin Bentley, AustonBentley, Austin Bentley. If you would like information about Two Vets Canine, you can send an email to Two Vets Canine Training at gmail.com, or you can look for us on the web at twovetscaninetraining.com.
There you go. Make sure you guys go ahead and follow them and be supportive of their channel and their organization. They're an amazing trainer, and we love and support them so much. Bumble up here is an amazing individual. Hers is 1-800-GOT-WASP. As you guys know, we love and cherish her so much. She's an amazing individual and everything. We hope that, you know, she keeps coming back, even though we know she will, because she's a boss. Make sure we follow our Beyond the Leash podcast as well, right up here on top, and also be linked in the description down below on the YouTube video, guys. And make sure we follow me at Service Dog Educator right up here. If you guys haven't already, be linked in the bio as well, and all the other social medias, including our Facebook for Beyond the Leash, TikTok, Instagram, and much, much more. We will see you guys very, very soon with another podcast. Be safe, and I'll see you all next time.